The days of the classic number 9 striker being football's most prized asset are fading fast. Now it's the wingers, explosive, unpredictable, game-changing, who are commanding the biggest price tags. But why? What's driving this shift in value? Today we're breaking down how modern football has moved beyond the traditional striker, why tactical changes have turned wingers into the real superstars, and what this says about the future of the game. Now, before we get onto the tactics of modern day football, I thought I'd take a quick look back at the numbers to give you an idea of one particular stat that has been changing over time, well, the last 20 years or so, and that is goal contributors. It may seem like an obvious statement to make, but putting the ball in the back of the net is the hardest thing to do in football, and therefore, the ones who can do it, and do it regularly, are more often than not going to be the match winners, the difference makers, and as a byproduct of that, the most valuable in the team. Back in 2005, things were pretty straightforward. Strikers were the main goal scorers, averaging over 20 goals per season. Wingers, on the other hand, usually scored less than half of that, between 8 and 10. When it comes to assists, wingers were the main creators and as such averaged about 5 or 6 assists per season, while strikers barely contributed with around 2 on average. In terms of overall involvement then, strikers had the upper hand, participating in roughly 0.7 goals per 90 minutes, whilst wingers were involved in about half as many, around 0.4. Fast forward though to 2015 and the gap began to close. Strikers still averaged around 18 goals per season, but wingers were now hitting 12 to 14 goals regularly. Assists for wingers increased too, up to around 8 per season, while strikers improved slightly to 4. The overall goal involvement numbers for wingers was now at 0.65 per 90 minutes, getting closer to the striker's 0.7. This reflected a tactical evolution. Wingers started playing narrower, cutting inside to shoot or combine with midfielders, whilst the rise of false nines and fluid front lines blurred the traditional striking role. So to today in the 24-25 season, the story is very different. Strikers still score a strong 18 goals on average, but wingers aren't far behind with 16. The assist gap is even wider as wingers are racking up around 10, double that of strikers at 5. When we combine goals and assists, wingers now edge out strikers with about 0.72 goal involvements compared to 0.68 for forwards. In the modern day, we have expected goals and assists too, the data of which also confirms that wingers have a solid expected goals figure of around 0.45 and expected assists of 0.30, showing their dual threat in scoring and creating. Strikers still have a higher expected goals number with about 0.55, but just 0.15 for assists. In a nutshell, the wingers have become hybrid attackers, now both part creator and part finisher. But the data does not stop there. Just as a quick snapshot for this season, here's the top 5 players in Europe's top leagues when it comes to goals and assists per 90 minutes. At the very top, Mo Salah, no surprise, with a ridiculous 1.41. That means he's involved in more than one goal every full game he plays. Right behind him is Harry Kane, a classic striker, showing he's still a top scorer with 1.29 combined, but the rest of the top 5, they're all wingers. Michael Olise from Bayern's at 1.25, whilst Rafinha and Vinicius Jr. both have 1.13. It's no wonder that the 2025 Ballon d'Or contenders include several wingers instead of pure strikers. Salah, Dembele, Rafinha and Yamal all have a worthy shout of winning it. So with this change in goal scoring and goal creating reliance from strikers to wingers, I thought to myself, I wonder if the transfer market reflects this, and what do you know? It does. If you look at the transfer spending over the last 20 years in the top European leagues, the percentage of money spent on pure strikers has slowly declined, whilst the spending on wingers has risen sharply. Around 2005, 28% of the transfer spend went to strikers with 15% on wingers. By 2025, spending on pure strikers has dropped to 24%, whilst the wingers now take about 35% of that total spend. Think of the crazy amounts over the years spent on Bale, Dembele, Neymar, 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗔, Grealish, Hazard, even Florian Wirtz, who will probably end up as some sort of inside forward winger hybrid at Liverpool. Certainly not as a classic striker. There's been big numbers on strikers too, but no way near as much as there has been in the past. So are these spending habits indicative of just goal scoring and goal contributions? Well, to be honest, yes. But why are they scoring more? Well, here comes the tactical part, where I'll do my best to break this down with some relatable examples. So to start off, traditionally strikers were the focal point of attack, as proven in the numbers from earlier. The aim of the game was to get them in the best position to score because they were the ones who could do it. You'd often find them in formations like 4-4-2 with two strikers sharing goal-scoring duties and often forming lethal partnerships. Think Andy Cole and Dwight York combining for that goal in their new camp in the late 90s. Genius. But football tactics have changed dramatically over the past 2 decades. The dominant formation now is the 4-3-3 or a similar variation like a 4-2-3-1. Basically, a single striker supported by a midfield 3 and 2 wide men. This lone striker faces 2 centre-backs for the majority of occasions and is often isolated, outnumbered and relying on teammates to create chances. Their role has shifted from being the sole orchestrator of attacks to mainly finishing moves built elsewhere. Meanwhile, wingers have moved from hugging the touchline to playing narrower and higher up the pitch, mainly due to higher fullbacks or the midfield 3 being able to spread themselves horizontally enough to cover any gaps left by a far too attacking winger. They now operate in half spaces, closer to goal, combining scoring with chance creation. But who do we credit with this shift in momentum? Well, I'd say there's a few major tactical turning points in the development over the winger as the star player. But before we get onto those, I obviously have to acknowledge the rise of Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. Basically, Messi and Ronaldo laid a whole new blueprint for a winger, heck, a whole new player in general. Ones that could do absolutely everything, to the point where getting the best out of them and getting the ball to them wherever they were on the pitch was genuinely a pretty good idea. However, when we look at wingers as a whole, both then and now, those two are complete anomalies in the data, because no striker is doing what they do, never mind any other winger. Ridiculous numbers. So in this case, I'm looking at one particular thing they were early pioneers of, and that is playing on the opposite side to their supposed stronger foot. Of course, they weren't the first to do this, but before them, very few players actually did. Both 𝗷𝗵𝗴Ｈ and Ronaldinho come to mind, but traditionally, wide players stuck to their stronger sides. Think Beckham and Giggs playing on the right and left respectively. Now, you'd be hard-pressed to find a team that doesn't have at least one inverted winger, if not 2. This shift in tactics has allowed wingers to cut inside onto their stronger foot instead of their weaker one, and opened up a whole new host of potential threats to the opposition goal. They could interchange passes with nearby midfielders, find new angles to shoot from, create space for an overlapping fullback, swing crosses inwards instead of outwards, and so many other options. From here, we've really seen the likes of Arjen Robben and Frank Ribery explode onto a whole new level. This rise in goal contributions from wingers then led to a new era of striker. One who still scored plenty, but if they could also do the hard work off the ball to open up space for the wingers, it was still just as effective because the wingers could also be relied upon to score. Think of Benzema and Suarez filling those roles. Both unbelievable forwards in their own right, but far from being just goal scorers, they were unselfish workers and certainly were overshadowed in the recognition and awards department in comparison to their more illustrious attacking partners. In fact, both were the cheapest or least valuable in terms of market worth on paper in their respective front 3, a sign of things to come in the transfer market. But that's no disrespect, it's just the harsh truth of playing alongside arguably 2 of the greatest players football has ever seen. Following on from this though, came Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool, as the front 3 perfectly illustrated complementary roles where the centre forward wasn't even on the same level as the goal scoring wingers. No disrespect again, Firmino was just as important to Klopp's great team as the others, but the truth is that his role as a deep lying forward freed up Salah and Mane to move into space beyond the back line and attack the goal from a more direct angle than out wide, with regular runs from out to in. Firmino's lack of goal-scoring numbers wasn't even held against him because his play was seen as necessary to allow Salah especially to score so many goals. Which then brings us to the last few years, where the importance of a striker and their various abilities is still there, whether as a goal scorer or creator, but the burden of scoring and assisting has now been spread across the front 3 as a whole. From a purely numbers point of view, this makes total sense, just for the fact there are normally 2 wingers in each side, which, combined with a central striker, gives 3 attackers close to and directly attacking the box, instead of just 2 in a 4-4-2 formation, for example. The best teams today prove this, with Liverpool, Barcelona, PSG all having goal threats from all angles, whereas if you look at City or Arsenal, for example, an injury or drop in form to Haaland or Saka respectively leaves them painfully exposed on the goal-scoring front. I mean, when Haaland doesn't score, he gets called a League 2 player because he doesn't seem to do much else. Something that would be a little bit more unnoticed if City actually had wingers to provide goals instead. For example, in the 2021 season, they had no prolific forward, but they shared the goals around the whole team, with midfielder 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗔 -𝗬𝗓 being top scorer in the Premier League with 13. Arsenal have also been crying out for a centre forward for a few years now, and whilst it helps to have one, they still need more contributions from the rest of the team apart from just Saka. I can only see it being these sort of forward/wingers for two reasons. Firstly, because there is a huge demand for them, not only for one, but for two in each side, as I discussed. The emphasis on modern tactics is placed on them. This basically follows the exact same principle of 20 or so years ago, when you'd often find two strikers on whom the emphasis was placed. So it's the same idea, but the proverbial goalposts have been moved. And secondly, because whilst a last-minute save from your goalkeeper could win you the cup, or a solid defensive partnership sets the tone for a well-coordinated backline, in a footballing world that's run more like business with bigger and bigger transfer fees, players are going to need to have clear, valuable numbers to justify their worth and, God, I hate myself for saying this, showing themselves as a good return on investment. Oh, God. And what's more valuable than scoring or providing match-winning goals on a regular basis? So with all that said and done, what do you see as the next tactical development in football, and which players will be the most valuable in the years to come? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe with that notification bell on, and until the next one, I'll see you later.